Listen, before we begin, I have to put this up here right in front so that there's no misunderstanding. Nothing presented in this recorded recovery seminar is intended to be, listen, nor does it constitute diagnosis of anything of any kind or medical anything of any kind. I don't do that. Others do that. What I do is present some things from another way of looking at them to see if they can be of some help. I put another spin, another angle outside the box for those who struggle. So I'm reaching out. I'm reaching out to help them. See if in this that I presented to those in attendance on that day and how I presented it to them, you too can find some new and helpful understanding. This is an outside-the-box, another approach recovery seminar for those alcoholics and addicts who struggle with their sobriety, many of whom have relapsed again, and yes, yet again. See if it helps you. Here's the seminar. There's a lot of reasons why people turn to alcohol and drugs. One size does not fit all. The workshop is called Healing the Inner Spirit. When people are born into this world, everybody gets 100 pieces to the puzzle. Everybody got 100 pieces, okay? But in the process of living life, as we grow up in the various environments, in the family environment, the human being needs approval of the family, needs to fit in to the family. Now, when they don't, because they're of a different cut, and the family disapproves of sometimes their hopes, their dreams, family members, the family as such can disapprove of you. How many people here grew up in a family where the family disapproved of them? Let me see hands. How many of you grew up in a family where you really were not on their frequency and you thought they adopted you? See that? Yeah, I grew up in that family. So, how many people here have memories that are hurtful? Let me see hands. How many could say if they were a house, your house is haunted? Let me see hands on that. So, memories and all that. So that's where the healing comes in. Coming back from fragmentation, listen now, coming back into oneness, making sense out of life, calming the confusion inside, and that's where we're going with this tonight. Now, I grew up in a family where I thought they adopted me. I really thought that. I mean, they were all cucumbers. We lived in the neighborhood of the cucumbers. We went to the school of the cucumber. We went to the first church of the cucumber. And there I was, a pumpkin. Whoa. And they decided they would make a cucumber out of a pumpkin. And what they did to a young man's life was I became fragmented because I couldn't be what they needed me to be. I couldn't be what they wanted me to be. And I just didn't think along the lines they thought of. And I didn't know where to go with that. So there were other aspects of that growing up. So when I didn't conform, when I wasn't like they were, I was afraid of rejection. How many people here are afraid of rejection? Well, when you're afraid of rejection, just listen. Walls do not a prison make. Lack of options makes a prison. And when you're afraid of rejection, listen, you're in a prison. You don't have options. And when you're afraid of rejection, you either become a people pleaser, or the 100 pieces in your puzzle, you don't want to show them all the pieces because they will disapprove. So I grew up as a daydreamer. How many daydreamers I got here? Whoa, and they said, whoa, you're daydreaming. And I got to tell you, I turned the piece over. I said, okay, I won't daydream. You see? Then he said, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm thinking about this and that and that. They said, that's a damn fantasy. Wow. And I had to turn that piece over. Then as a young man, I wrote poetry. Don't write poetry. Play stickball. Wow. So I had to turn that piece over. I was creative. So all these pieces of the puzzle that I was, that made up who I am, all those pieces of the puzzle that I was, I had to turn those pieces over. I was a daydreamer. Part of being a daydreamer, when you're a daydreamer, that's a gift of creative intelligence from God, not something that's bad, but I thought it was bad. So the puzzle, who I was, the pieces of my life that God had given me, I couldn't use them. I was turning this piece over, that piece over. Why? Because I needed their approval. I had to live within the framework of that. So my identity was being lost. Healing the inner spirit. So I had to begin to find out who I was. But I didn't know who I was because I turned the pieces over. So my life was fragmented. But as I came into the rooms of the fellowship, something happened. There I was, and there were people talking. And I began to see something happening. There was a reflective law was taking place as the person up there spoke, because I began to see a piece of myself and my life in the person speaking. I said, wait a minute, this is like, look what's going on here. This guy is a mirror, a reflective law. I saw myself in the person speaking. That was like a mirror to me. Pieces of you, pieces of me. And I began to put the pieces of my own life back together, a little at a time. Someone said this, someone said that, someone said something else. And I began to realize it was okay to be a daydreamer. It was okay. It was all right to write poetry, and it was all right to be an artist, and it was okay to have creative intelligence. And I began to say, those are pieces of my life, pieces of who God made me, that I began to see others had those pieces. And in that puzzle, I started to turn the pieces that I had turned face down for their approval. I began to turn them face up, which began to show me who I was. My feelings had validity. My dreams had validity. The fantasies that I had, I was allowed to have them. They were part of my life and part of my needs, because they took the sharp edges off some of life. I was less interested in how you drank and drugged, but any place in the rooms where somebody started to talk about their life and some aspect of it that they had discovered was okay, that was it, man. I fed off that. I took that out in my heart of hearts, and I examined and I thought about it, and my life began to come together. The fragmentation was less, the pieces were less, the confusion started to clear up, because I began to see who I was. Healing the inner spirit. I know the stories about how we drank and all of that, but go to the meetings and listen where the people talk about putting their life together. But subsequent to that, another word for recovery is repair. Another word for recovery is healing. Another word for recovery is nurturing. So in the rooms, pieces of you, watch now, pieces of me. And the person up there becomes a mirror, and a reflective law happens. When someone speaks and you can see a piece of yourself and your story in what they said, a piece of their hurt, like when the man said his children had not spoken to him for many years, mine also. I couldn't run out to the diner. I saw a piece of my life and a piece of my situation in what he said. I went up there and I said, how do you manage that? I'm having a problem with it. How do you deal with it? And we went out and had coffee, and we had dinner several times, and he helped me to understand piecing your life together, a way in which the rooms operate, in addition to the drinking and drugging story, in addition to the steps, the hurts, the wounds inside, the repair that's needed. where someone can speak about the hurts and how they recovered, how they got the repair, in addition to the steps. Let me show you this. A busy businessman comes home one night on the railroad, and it's a hot, hot night. He comes home, no air conditioning on a train, comes home, his little boy, kid's 2.5, 3 years old, the guy comes home on a hot summer night, he's sitting in the den, reading, and here comes his little 3-year-old kid. Daddy, you want to play with me? I want to play. He don't want to play with this kid. He said, no, Daddy, can't play with you now. I got to play with me, Daddy. And the kid ain't giving up, So his father opens the magazine, and there's an ad for an airline. 2 pages. This page tells it all about the airline, the perks, all this. And the right-hand page has a map of the world. Whoa, he says, okay, Daddy's going to play with you. Oh, the kid is so happy. He says, see this? This is a map of the world, he said. See that? Now, you go get tape from your mommy, and you go put the map of the world together. And when you get this map all together and it's right, you bring it back to Daddy, and Daddy will play with you. So the kid skips off. The old man's reading the magazine because he's safe. This kid ain't going to put the map of the world together. And here he comes. I got it. So the old man's ready to tell him no. And he gives his father the map of the world, and he's got the whole map of the world pasted together with the tape. Not neat, but he's got it. And this is where Africa is, this is where this is. He says, oh, your mommy helped you with that. He says, no, I did it all myself. He says, how did you do that? He says, see on the back there's a picture of a man. So I put the man together, and the whole world fell into place. A 100 pieces, everybody's got them. Pieces of you, pieces of me. To find the strong points, to find out, for want of another way to put it is, what is your ministry in life? What is your purpose? What is it that flows from your heart of hearts to do? The pieces. The story about the little boy. Watch it. And you, in the rooms, listen, I went up to that guy. How do you deal with that when your children don't talk to you? How do you deal with this? I mean, is it okay? It was okay for me to write I'm a writer. I write. I'm writing a book now. I'm an artist. We couldn't do that home. Get out and play ball. What are you doing? Painting pictures. You said. So anyhow, now in the rooms I find out that somebody said, oh, wow, you paint, you're an artist, you write, wow. Well, suddenly the self-worth comes up. That piece of puzzle that I turned over, I could turn it over again and say, see on that part, the picture, that's the artist. You see that picture? That's the writer. You see that? That's the daydreamer. That's the gift of creative intelligence that God gave me. And I began to put the pieces of my life together. With the understanding of people in the rooms. Not everybody has it. You got to go find those people in the rooms. You look for them. When my brother and I were little, we walked to my Aunt Isabel's house, just listen, and it was a big area as big as this property up there, and the 4-leaf clover was supposed to be lucky. I'm looking over a 4-leaf clover, baby. And we would, my brother and I, as we'd have the picnic lunch on the way up, we'd look for 4-leaf clover. And we'd always tell my daddy, there's no 4-leaf clovers here. And he'd say, you keep looking, there's no 4-leaf clovers here. But as long as we kept looking, we always found a 4-leaf clover. And if you keep looking for those people in the rooms who can touch your heart and hear your heart, that'll be your 4-leaf clover when you find it. You see that? You stick to it. Go ahead. That'll be your 4-leaf clover. Oh, yeah. The story goes, the little boy wanted a puppy dog. So he goes to the pet shop with his father, and listen to this, and all the little puppies are in a cage down low. So he says to his father, could I see all those puppies out here? So he asked the pet store owner, there was no one in the pet store. He said, sure. So the pet store owner opened the doors to the cage, and all the puppies came out. Little boy was down on his hands and knees playing with them, and they were wagging their tails. And he looked up, and one little puppy had not cleared the cage yet, was coming out limping. So the little boy stood up and he said, Daddy, he said, that one, that's the one I want. And the pet store owner said, you don't want him, son. He has a splint on his leg. And the little boy pulled his pants leg up and he had a brace. And he said, I know, but he's going to need somebody that understands. Watch. From the stories and the things that I've done here with you and the things that I've said, there's an auction going on, and the auctioneer has an old violin, beat up. He says, what do I bid for this violin? Somebody says, 20. He's going once for 20, going once, 30, once for 30, twice for 30, 40, once for 50, 55. And an old man in the front row got up and he stops. He says, excuse me, could I see that violin? And the auctioneer said, see, we got an auction going on here. He said, please, please. So the auctioneer handed him the violin. He tightened the bow, and he put rosin on it, and he tuned the violin, and he began to play music in the auction room, and there wasn't a dry eye crying at the beautiful music. And he gave the violin back to the auctioneer, and the auctioneer said, thank you. He said, thank you to the auctioneer. The auctioneer says, thank you, sir. He said, okay, what am I bid for this violin now? And the opening bid was $300. $450, $700, $800, $900, $3,500 later, they sell the violin. A guy says, I don't get it, man. He said, they wouldn't give you $100 for the thing. What made the difference? He said, it was the touch of the master's hand. You see, the music isn't in the violin. The music is in the man or woman. And when you speak, listen, at a meeting, and someone sees a piece of themselves in you when you're okay, that's music to their heart and music to their ears. How many have experienced that? And you go from, and you go like the old violin one day to priceless at the touch of the master's hand. Go ahead, because who can put a price? Yeah. Who can put a price? Who can put a price? Who can put a price on your story? Who can put a price on your life? Your life is the message for those God sends to you. And people's lives fragmented, broken into pieces. Sometimes the master, he's the healer of broken hearts. He's the mender of shattered dreams. He picks up the pieces of your broken life and mends them together again as he speaks through others when they tell their story. I spoke to you tonight about healing the inner spirit, healing your heart of hearts, healing the heart that hurts. It is a shame that when we're little children, it doesn't start out with the nurturing and the love and the caring and the building of self-worth and self-esteem and dignity. Too bad when we were little children, they don't take the little boy or the little girl, lie down on the floor, maybe in the afternoon, sun coming in the window, maybe in the evening, and you say to the little child, want to hear my heart? Put your head here. Hear my heart. And the child puts their ear next to your chest, and the child hears your heart. And the first thing the little boy or little girl says is, does mine do that? Does mine do that? Yes, yours does that. Listen to mine, listen to mine. So you turn the little boy or little girl over, and you put your ear next to their chest, and they want to know, do you hear it? Do you hear it? Does mine do that? Yes. And then you say, would you like to hear my heart talk? And the little boy or little girl says, your heart could talk? Come on, I'll show you. Put your ear down here next to my chest again. And the kid puts the ear down there and says, I don't hear it talking. I don't hear. Shh. 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 And then you hug the child and you say, I love you very much. And the child just heard your heart talk. Then you turn the little boy or little girl over and you say, now, when you put your ear next to their chest, say, let me hear your heart talk. And the little boy or little girl hugs you and says, I love you very much. And we teach our children the language of the heart. Bravo, thank you. Healing the inner spirit. What a different world. But you can have that world. You can have that world because in the seminars that I've done through all these years, I say to you, listen to my heart, and I speak to you from my heart. And when you go to a meeting and you hear people speak, you listen. Some don't do it, but just here and there where it is they speak, and you can listen to their heart, where one heart knows another, and you can hear their heart and they can hear yours. Have you enjoyed this tonight? Whoa. Hey, if you found this outside the box recovery seminar that I just presented helpful to you, then share it. Share it with friends on Facebook and on Twitter and on your other social media accounts. You may help someone else's recovery by doing that. Well, that's the seminar. It's important, however, to understand that it's not offered as a replacement for your participation in the treatment and self-help programs that are available. It's offered to you for the purpose of opening new understanding and to encourage you to get into the appropriate self-help and treatment programs that are available for your life. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you around.